The morning sun painted the canyon walls in shades of gold and orange as Maya Rodriguez stepped out of her dusty truck. She had driven 3 hours from the city to reach this remote spot, and every mile had been worth it. The Clearwater Canyon was exactly what she needed for her latest photography project. Maya was 32 years old and had been taking pictures professionally for almost 10 years. She specialized in nature photography, but lately, she felt stuck in the same old routine. Her editor at the magazine kept asking for the same type of shots: pretty sunsets, peaceful lakes, and perfect mountain views. Maya wanted something different, something raw and real. The canyon was perfect for that. The river below rushed with unusual force, swollen by weeks of melting snow from the mountains. The water crashed against rocks and fallen trees, creating white foam that danced in the morning light. Maya could already imagine the dramatic photos she would capture. She pulled her camera bag from the truck and checked her equipment one more time. 2 cameras, 4 lenses, extra batteries, and memory cards. Everything was ready. The weather forecast had promised clear skies all day, and Maya planned to make the most of it. About 2 miles upstream, Cole Bennett was having a very different kind of morning. He had been awake since 4:30, same as every day for the past 15 years. Ranch work didn't care about your sleep schedule or whether you felt like getting up. The cattle needed checking, the fences needed mending, and the land needed tending. Cole was 41 years old with hands that showed every year of hard work. His grandfather had started this ranch in 1952, and his father had expanded it through the good years of the 80s and 90s. Now it was Cole's turn to keep the family legacy alive, and it wasn't easy. The ranch was struggling. Beef prices had dropped, feed costs had gone up, and the bank was sending letters that Cole tried not to think about too much. His wife had left 2 years ago, tired of the uncertain income and the isolation. She had moved back to town with their 8-year-old daughter, Luna. Cole saw Luna every other weekend, and those visits were the highlight of his life. This morning, Cole was riding his horse, Thunder, along the fence line that bordered the river. The winter had been harsh, and he needed to check for damaged posts and broken wire. Thunder was a reliable mount, steady and calm even when the river rushed loud enough to spook other horses. As they moved along the fence, Cole noticed how high the water was running. In his 41 years, he had seen the river flood maybe 3 or 4 times, and this looked like it might be building to another one. The spring snowmelt was coming down fast this year, faster than the river could handle. He made a mental note to move the cattle from the lower pasture to higher ground. The last thing he needed was to lose livestock to flood water. Every head of cattle mattered when you were already struggling to make ends meet. Maya, meanwhile, had found what she thought was the perfect spot. A large boulder jutted out over the river, giving her an elevated view of the rushing water below. She could get shots looking downstream toward the canyon mouth, or upstream toward the mountains. The light was hitting the water just right, creating sparkles and shadows that would look amazing through her lens. She tested the boulder carefully, putting her full weight on it and bouncing slightly. It felt solid, anchored deep in the bank. The surface was rough enough that her boots would grip well, and it was big enough that she could move around to get different angles. Maya set up her tripod and attached her main camera. The sound of the water was louder here, almost overwhelming, but she found it energizing rather than distracting. This was exactly the kind of wild, untamed scene she had been looking for. She started with wide shots, capturing the entire sweep of the river as it curved through the canyon. Then she switched to a longer lens to focus on specific sections where the water crashed against rocks. The spray caught the sunlight and created tiny rainbows that lasted just long enough for her to capture them. Time seemed to disappear as Maya lost herself in her work. This was always how it happened when she found the right subject. Hours could pass without her noticing, as she chased the perfect combination of light and composition. Cole had worked his way almost a mile downstream when Thunder suddenly lifted his head and stepped sideways. The horse's ears were forward, alert to something Cole couldn't yet see or hear over the sound of the river. "What is it, boy?" Cole asked, patting Thunder's neck. The horse had good instincts, better than most people Cole knew. If Thunder was nervous about something, it was worth paying attention to. Cole looked around carefully. The fence line looked normal. No broken posts, no sagging wire. The river was running high and fast, but that wasn't unusual given the time of year and recent weather. Still, Thunder remained tense, shifting his weight from foot to foot in a way that meant he wanted to move. Maya was completely absorbed in her photography when she noticed the light starting to change. Clouds were building in the west, still far away but moving in her direction. She had maybe another hour of good light before the overcast would flatten everything out. She decided to try a different angle, something more dramatic. If she could get closer to the edge of the boulder, she might be able to capture the water rushing directly beneath her. It would be a risky shot, requiring her to lean out over the river, but the perspective would be unique. Maya checked her camera strap twice, making sure it was secure around her neck. She had lost equipment to accidents before and couldn't afford to replace everything again. Her insurance had limits and good cameras weren't cheap. She repositioned her tripod closer to the edge and adjusted the legs carefully. The boulder's surface was more uneven here, and she had to work to get the tripod stable. But once she had it set up, the view through her camera was exactly what she had hoped for. The water rushed past maybe 15 feet below, close enough that she could see individual droplets in the spray. The current was faster than she had realized, and the water was a muddy brown color from all the runoff. It looked powerful and dangerous, but also beautiful in its wild energy. Cole was still trying to figure out what had thunder spooked when he heard something that made his blood run cold. Over the constant roar of the river, he could swear he heard a human voice, not calling out in greeting, but something else. Something that sounded like fear. He urged Thunder forward, following the fence line toward the sound. The horse moved reluctantly, still nervous about something Cole couldn't identify. As they rounded a bend in the river, Cole could see further upstream to where the canyon walls rose higher and the water ran even faster. That's when he saw the bright blue jacket on the boulder overlooking the river. Someone was up there, right at the edge, in a position that made Cole's rancher instinct scream danger. The bank in that area was undercut by years of high water. It looked solid from above, but Cole knew it could give way without warning. Maya was lining up what she hoped would be the shot of the day when she felt the boulder shift slightly beneath her feet. It was just a tiny movement, barely noticeable, but it was enough to make her heart skip a beat. She stepped back from the edge and looked down at where the boulder met the bank. That's when she saw the problem. The spring runoff had been washing away the soil beneath the boulder for weeks. What had looked like solid ground was actually just a thin layer of dirt and roots holding everything together, and that thin layer was starting to give way under her weight and the vibration from her movements. Maya realized she was in serious trouble, and she was completely alone in one of the most remote spots in the entire state. Maya felt the ground beneath her feet start to crumble. What had seemed like solid rock just moments before was actually loose soil and small stones held together by nothing more than tree roots and hope. The constant flow of the swollen river had been eating away at the foundation for weeks, and Maya's weight was the final straw. She tried to step backward, away from the edge, but it was already too late. The entire section of the bank was giving way, taking the boulder and everything on it down toward the churning water below. Maya grabbed for her camera equipment out of pure instinct. Even as her rational mind screamed that saving her life was more important than saving her gear, the fall seemed to happen in slow motion and lightning speed at the same time. Maya felt herself tumbling through the air, her arms windmilling as she tried to find something, anything, to grab onto. Her camera bag swung wildly on her shoulder, the weight of the equipment pulling her sideways as she fell. The first thing that hit the water was her right leg, and the shock of the cold took her breath away completely. The river water was maybe 40 degrees, fed by snow that had been solid ice just days before. The cold was so intense it felt like being stabbed with thousands of tiny knives all at once. Then the current grabbed her. Maya had been swimming since she was 5 years old and considered herself strong in the water. But this was nothing like swimming in a pool or even a lake. The river current was like a living thing with its own will, and that will was to carry her downstream as fast as possible. Her heavy camera bag immediately became a problem. The equipment inside was expensive and built to last, which meant it was also heavy. The bag strapped across her shoulder acted like an anchor, pulling her down beneath the surface every time she tried to get her head above water to breathe. Maya managed to get a quick breath and tried to shout for help, but her voice was lost in the roar of the water. The sound of the river was deafening, echoing off the canyon walls and drowning out everything else. Even if someone had been close by, they might not have heard her over the noise. The current carried her around a bend and slammed her into a partially submerged tree trunk. The impact knocked the air out of her lungs and sent sharp pain shooting through her ribs. She tried to grab onto the tree, but her hands were already going numb from the cold water, and the bark was slippery with moss and algae. Upstream, Cole had heard the splash and the brief cry for help. Thunder's nervous behavior suddenly made perfect sense. Somehow the horse had sensed the danger before it happened. Cole had learned to trust Thunder's instincts over the years, and he wished he had paid closer attention this time. He could see the fresh scar in the riverbank where the ground had given way, and he could see pieces of photography equipment floating in the water. A camera lens cap bobbed past, followed by what looked like part of a tripod leg. But he couldn't see the person who had been using that equipment. Cole urged Thunder along the bank, following the flow of the river and scanning the water for any sign of the person who had fallen in. The horse picked his way carefully along the uneven ground, instinctively staying well back from the water's edge. Then Cole saw her. A flash of bright blue jacket about 50 yards downstream, appearing and disappearing in the white water. The person was still alive and still moving, but they were being carried along by the current at a speed that would make any rescue attempt extremely difficult. Maya was fighting for her life. Every time she managed to get her head above water and take a breath, the current would pull her back under. The camera bag was still dragged around her shoulder, and she knew she needed to get rid of it, but her hands were too cold and the strap was too tangled to work free easily. The water was carrying her toward a section of the river where the canyon walls grew higher, and the current ran even faster. Maya could see white water ahead, which meant rocks and obstacles that could easily kill her if she hit them at the wrong angle. She made a desperate decision. Using the last of her strength, she managed to slip one arm out of the camera bag strap. The bag immediately sank like a stone, taking thousands of dollars worth of equipment with it, but Maya didn't care. She could replace cameras and lenses. She couldn't replace her life. Without the weight of the equipment dragging her down, Maya was able to stay on the surface more consistently. She tried to position herself feet first, the way she had learned in a water safety class years ago. If she was going to hit rocks or obstacles, better to hit them with her feet than with her head. Cole was pushing Thunder as hard as he dared along the rocky bank. The horse was sure-footed and brave, but the terrain was treacherous. One wrong step could send both horse and rider tumbling down into the same water that was already claiming one victim. As they moved downstream, Cole was trying to think ahead. The river curved back and forth through the canyon, and he knew every bend from years of riding this fence line. About a quarter mile ahead, there was a spot where fallen trees had created a natural dam across part of the river. If the woman in the water could somehow grab onto those trees, it might be her only chance. But that also meant Cole had to get there first. He had to be in position and ready to help when she came through. And he had maybe 3 or 4 minutes to make it happen. Maya was growing weaker by the second. The cold water was sapping her strength faster than she could have imagined. Her arms and legs felt heavy and clumsy, and it was getting harder to coordinate her movements. She knew about hypothermia from her outdoor photography work, and she knew she was experiencing the early stages of it right now. The current carried her around another bend, and she could see that the river was narrowing ahead. The water was moving even faster, and she could hear a different sound mixed in with the general roar. It sounded like water hitting solid objects, which meant rocks or fallen trees. Maya tried to angle herself toward the bank, using a combination of swimming and letting the current carry her sideways. But her movements were getting sluggish, and the river was stronger than she was. She was going wherever the water wanted to take her, and all she could do was try to stay alive until it got her there. Cole reached the fallen trees with about 30 seconds to spare. He quickly tied Thunder's reins to a sturdy branch and grabbed the coiled rope from his saddle. Cole always carried rope when he was working. On a ranch, rope was one of the most useful tools you could have, and today it might be the difference between life and death for a complete stranger. He could see Maya coming around the upstream bend, still conscious but clearly struggling. The current was carrying her directly toward the fallen trees, which was good news and bad news. Good because it would stop her from being swept further downstream. Bad because the impact with the trees could easily knock her unconscious or break bones. Cole positioned himself on the most stable of the fallen trunks and got ready. He had one chance to do this right. If he missed, or if the rope got tangled, or if a dozen other things went wrong, the woman in the water would probably die. And Cole would have to live with the knowledge that he had been right there and failed to save her. Maya saw the fallen trees ahead and tried to prepare herself for the impact. She put her arms up to protect her head and face and tried to angle her body so she would hit the logs with her shoulder, instead of head-on. The collision was jarring but not as bad as she had feared. The logs were slippery and gave slightly under the impact, and Maya managed to wrap her arms around one of them before the current could pull her away. She was exhausted and shaking from the cold, but she was alive and she was no longer being swept downstream. That's when she looked up and saw Cole standing on the logs above her, a rope in his hands and a look of fierce determination on his weathered face. "Ma'am, I'm going to get you out of there," he called down to her, "but I need you to hold on just a little bit longer. Can you do that for me?" Maya tried to answer, but her teeth were chattering so hard she couldn't form words. She managed to nod and tighten her grip on the log. She had been alone and terrified just moments before, but now there was someone here to help, someone who looked like he knew exactly what he was doing. Cole secured one end of the rope around a solid branch and began fashioning a loop in the other end. He had done this kind of rescue work before, pulling calves out of mud and helping horses that had gotten stuck in bad spots. People weren't that different from animals when it came to the basics of getting them to safety. Cole looked down at Maya clinging to the fallen log and quickly assessed the situation. She was conscious and able to hold on, but he could see the signs of hypothermia setting in. Her lips were turning blue, her movements were becoming sluggish, and she was shivering violently. He had maybe 10 minutes before the cold water would make her too weak to help with her own rescue. The fallen trees created a partial dam across the river, but the water was still rushing through the gaps between the logs with tremendous force. Maya was in a relatively calm pocket behind one of the larger trees, but Cole knew that wouldn't last long. The current was constantly trying to pull her around the end of the log and back into the main flow. Cole had dealt with water rescues before, but never anything quite like this. He had pulled cattle out of flooded creeks and helped neighbors whose vehicles had gotten stuck in rising water. But those situations had involved equipment, multiple people, and usually calmer conditions. This was just him, his rope, and a woman who was running out of time. He called down to Maya, speaking loudly to be heard over the roar of the water. "Ma'am, what's your name?" Maya managed to force out the words between chattering teeth. Maya Rodriguez." "Okay, Maya, I'm Cole Bennett. I've got a ranch upstream from here. I'm going to get you out of that water, but I need you to listen carefully and do exactly what I tell you. Can you do that?" Maya nodded, focusing all her energy on staying alert and following instructions. She was a freelance photographer, used to working alone and making her own decisions. But right now she was completely dependent on this stranger who had appeared when she needed help most. Cole continued working with the rope as he talked. "The water's moving too fast for me to just pull you straight up. We're going to have to work together to get you to the bank. I'm going to lower this rope down to you, and I need you to put it under your arms and around your chest. Not around your waist, because that could hurt your ribs if you swing into something. Can you let go of that log with one hand?" Maya tested her grip and found that her hands were getting numb from the cold. She could barely feel her fingers, but she could still make them move. "I think so," she called back. Cole finished preparing the rope and began lowering it toward Maya. The current immediately grabbed the rope and tried to sweep it downstream, but Cole had anticipated that. He had tied small pieces of wood to the rope at intervals to give it weight and help it sink toward Maya instead of floating away. The first attempt missed. The rope came down about 3 feet to Maya's left, close enough that she could see it but too far away to reach without letting go of the log completely. Cole quickly pulled it back up and repositioned himself on the logs, moving closer to the spot where Maya was holding on. "Second try coming down," Cole called. "If you can't reach it easily, don't let go of that log. We'll keep trying until we get it right." This time the rope came down almost directly overhead. Maya managed to grab it with her left hand while keeping her right arm wrapped around the log. The rope felt rough and solid in her numb fingers, like a lifeline to safety. But getting the rope positioned correctly while holding onto the log with one hand and fighting the current was almost impossible. Maya tried several times to work the loop over her head and under her arms, but her movements were clumsy from the cold, and the rushing water kept pushing the rope away from her body. Cole could see what was happening and realized they needed a different approach. "Maya, listen to me," he called down. "I'm going to come down there and help you get set up. The water's not that deep where you are, and I can wade out that far." "No," Maya managed to shout back. "Too dangerous. Current's too strong." But Cole had already made his decision. He had seen too many situations where hesitation meant the difference between success and tragedy. Maya was losing strength by the minute, and trying to manage the rope from above wasn't working fast enough. Cole tied the other end of the rope securely around his own waist and began working his way down into the water. The cold hit him like a physical blow, even through his thick clothing. The water was deeper than it had looked from above, coming up to his chest, and the current was stronger than he had expected. But Cole had advantages that Maya didn't have. He was bigger and stronger. He wasn't already exhausted from fighting the river, and most importantly, he was connected to the shore by the rope around his waist. Even if he lost his footing, the rope would prevent him from being swept downstream. He worked his way carefully toward Maya, using the fallen logs for support and testing each step before committing his full weight. The bottom of the river was covered with loose rocks and debris that had been washed down by the high water, making every step treacherous. When Cole reached Maya, he could see that she was in worse shape than she had appeared from above. Her face was pale except for her blue lips, and her eyes had the unfocused look that came with the beginning stages of hypothermia. She was still conscious and responsive, but Cole knew that could change quickly. "Maya, I'm right here with you now," Cole said, his voice calm and reassuring despite the dangerous situation they were both in. "I'm going to help you get this rope positioned, and then we're going to work together to get to the bank. Just keep holding onto that log until I tell you otherwise." Cole positioned himself between Maya and the strongest part of the current, using his body to shield her from the worst of the water's force. Then he began working the rope loop over her head and under her arms, taking his time to make sure it was positioned correctly. The rope loop fit snugly under Maya's arms and across her chest. Cole tested it by pulling gently, making sure it was secure but not so tight that it would restrict her breathing. "How does that feel?" he asked. "Good," Maya managed to say. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Cole replied with a slight smile. "We've still got to get out of here." Cole looked back toward the shore and began planning their route. The current was too strong to fight directly, but he could use it to their advantage. If they worked their way along the fallen logs toward the bank, the current would help push them in the right direction instead of fighting against them. "Maya, here's what we're going to do," Cole explained. "We're going to move along these logs toward the shore. I'll go first and help guide you. The rope connecting us will make sure we don't get separated. If you lose your footing, don't panic. The rope will hold you and I'll help you get back up." Maya nodded, trying to concentrate on Cole's words despite the fog of cold and exhaustion that was settling over her mind. She trusted him completely at this point. He had come into the water to help her when he could have stayed safe on the shore. That took a special kind of courage, and Maya knew she was lucky that this particular man had been in the right place at the right time. Cole began moving along the logs, testing each handholds and foothold before trusting his weight to it. The logs were slippery and constantly shifting as the current pushed against them, but they provided a pathway toward the shore that was much safer than trying to swim through the open water. Maya followed Cole's lead, moving carefully from one handholds to the next. Her movements were slow and awkward because of the cold, but the rope connecting them to Cole gave her confidence. Even when her grip slipped or her foot missed a step, she knew Cole was there to catch her. They had made it about halfway to the shore when Maya's strength finally gave out completely. Her hand slipped off the log she was holding, and the current immediately grabbed her legs and tried to sweep her away. The rope around her chest went tight, jerking her to a stop and pulling Cole backward into deeper water. For a moment, both of them were in serious danger. Cole was fighting to maintain his own position while supporting Maya's full weight against the current. Maya was conscious but unable to help herself, hanging from the rope like a rag doll as the water rushed over her. Cole knew this was the critical moment. If he lost his footing now, they would both be swept into the main current and carried downstream toward even more dangerous water. He planted his feet as firmly as possible and began pulling Maya back toward the logs, fighting against the river's attempt to claim them both. "Come on, Maya," Cole grunted as he pulled against the rope. "Stay with me. We're almost there." With tremendous effort, Cole managed to get Maya back to the relative safety of the fallen logs. But now she was barely conscious and unable to help with her own rescue. Cole realized he was going to have to carry her the rest of the way to shore, and he was going to have to do it while fighting a current that was trying to kill them both. This was the moment when Cole made the decision that would define both of their lives. Instead of trying to find an easier way or waiting for help that might not come in time, He picked Maya up in his arms and began the final push toward the shore. Cole lifted Maya into his arms, feeling how light she had become in the water, but also how limp and unresponsive she was getting. Her head lolled against his shoulder, and he could feel her shallow breathing against his neck. The hypothermia was taking hold fast, and Cole knew they had minutes, not hours, before it became life-threatening. The water was trying to push them both downstream with every step Cole took. His boots struggled to find solid footing on the rocky river bottom, and more than once he felt himself starting to slip. But each time, he adjusted his grip on Maya and planted his feet more firmly, refusing to let the river win. "Maya," Cole said loudly, trying to keep her conscious. "Maya, I need you to stay awake. Talk to me. Tell me about those pictures you were taking." Maya's eyes fluttered open, but Cole could see she was struggling to focus. "Pictures," she mumbled. "Lost my cameras." "We'll worry about cameras later," Cole replied, taking another careful step toward shore. "Right now we need to get you warm and dry." "What kind of pictures do you usually take?" It was a desperate attempt to keep Maya's mind active and her body fighting against the cold. Cole had learned from dealing with injured animals that sometimes the difference between life and death was simply the will to keep fighting. And he was determined to keep Maya fighting. The rope around his waist was his lifeline to safety, but it was also creating problems. Every time he moved, the current would catch the rope and try to pull him off balance. Cole had to constantly adjust his position to keep the rope from tangling around the fallen logs or getting caught on underwater obstacles. Maya tried to answer Cole's question, but her words were slurred and hard to understand. Nature, wildlife. Wanted something different this time. "Well, you definitely got something different," Cole said with a grunt as he pulled them both over a particularly large log. "This'll be a story to tell for sure." They were getting closer to the shore, but Cole could feel his own strength starting to fade. The combination of fighting the current, carrying Maya's weight, and dealing with the cold water was taking its toll. His legs were cramping and his shoulders ached from the strain of keeping them both upright. That's when Cole's foot slipped on a moss-covered rock, and he went down hard, taking Maya with him. They both went under the surface briefly, and when Cole managed to get his head above water again, Maya was completely unconscious. The situation had just gone from dangerous to critical. Cole was now dealing with an unconscious person in fast-moving water, and he was still 20 feet from solid ground. The rope around his waist was the only thing preventing them both from being swept away, and Cole could feel it cutting into his ribs with every surge of the current. "Maya!" Cole shouted, trying to wake her up. "Maya, come back to me." But Maya didn't respond. Her body was completely limp in Cole's arms, and he couldn't tell if she was still breathing regularly. Cole knew he had to get her to shore immediately. But the final 20 feet looked like the most dangerous part of the entire rescue. The current was strongest near the bank, where all the water flowing through the fallen logs was concentrated into a narrow channel. Cole would have to carry Maya through that channel while fighting water that was moving fast enough to knock down a horse. Cole looked back toward where Thunder was waiting, tied securely to one of the larger trees. The horse was watching the rescue attempt with obvious anxiety, but there was nothing the animal could do to help. This was all on Cole now. "I won't let you go," Cole said to Maya, even though she couldn't hear him. "I don't know who you are or where you came from, but I'm not letting this river take you. Not today." It was partly a promise to Maya and partly a promise to himself. Cole had lost too many things in his life already. His wife had left, his ranch was struggling, and sometimes he felt like everything he cared about was slipping away. But this was one thing he could control. This was one person he could save. Cole adjusted his grip on Maya and began the final push toward shore. He used the rope around his waist as a guide, following it hand over hand toward the point where it was tied to the tree. Each step was a battle against the current, but Cole had found a reserve of strength he didn't know he possessed. The water was chest deep here, and Cole had to lean forward to keep from being pushed over backward. Maya's unconscious body was both a burden and a responsibility that gave Cole the motivation to keep going when his own strength wanted to fail. With 10 feet to go, Cole felt his legs starting to give out. The combination of cold exhaustion and the constant strain of fighting the current had pushed him to his limit. But he could see solid ground ahead, and he could see Thunder waiting patiently for their return. Cole took one more step and felt his foot hit something solid, a submerged log or large rock that didn't shift when he put his weight on it. He used it as a platform to push off from, gathering himself for one final effort to reach the shore. 5 feet from the bank, Maya started breathing irregularly. Cole could feel her chest moving erratically against his arm, and he realized she might be going into some kind of medical crisis. Hypothermia could cause all kinds of problems with breathing and heart rhythm, and Cole didn't have the medical knowledge to deal with those complications. "Come on, Maya," Cole grunted as he took the last few steps toward dry ground. "Don't give up on me now. We're almost there." Cole's boots finally hit solid ground that didn't shift or slide under his weight. He carried Maya up the bank and laid her gently on a flat spot next to where Thunder was tied. Maya was unconscious, breathing shallowly and shivering uncontrollably. Her skin was pale with a blue tint around her lips and fingertips. Cole knew the immediate danger was hypothermia, but he also knew that just getting Maya out of the water wasn't enough. Her body temperature was dangerously low, and without proper treatment she could still die even though they had reached safety. Cole untied Thunder and quickly mounted the horse. He positioned Maya in front of him in the saddle, wrapping his arms around her to keep her secure and share his body heat. Thunder seemed to understand the urgency of the situation and started moving toward the ranch house without needing to be guided. As they rode, Cole kept talking to Maya, trying to stimulate some kind of response. "Maya, we're heading to my place. It's not far. I've got a warm house and a fireplace, and we're going to get you fixed up. You're going to be fine." Maya's head was resting against Cole's chest, and he could feel her breathing becoming more regular. That was a good sign, but Cole knew she wasn't out of danger yet. Hypothermia was tricky. People could seem to be recovering and then suddenly get worse again. The ride to the ranch house took 15 minutes that felt like hours. Cole pushed Thunder as fast as he dared over the rough ground, balancing speed with the need to keep Maya secure in the saddle. Every few minutes he would check to make sure she was still breathing and still had a pulse. When they finally reached the ranch house, Cole carried Maya inside and laid her on the couch in front of the fireplace. The house was cold because Cole rarely bothered to heat it during the day when he was working outside. But he quickly got a fire started and began the process of warming Maya back up. Cole had dealt with hypothermia before, mostly in animals, but the basic principles were the same. Gradual warming was key. Too much heat too fast could actually be dangerous. He covered Maya with blankets and positioned her close enough to the fire to benefit from the warmth without getting overheated. Then Cole did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed, not because he was particularly religious, but because Maya's life was now out of his hands. He had done everything he could think of to save her, and now all he could do was wait and hope it had been enough. Maya's breathing began to improve as her body temperature slowly rose. The violent shivering gradually decreased and some color started to return to her face. Cole sat beside the couch, monitoring her condition and adding wood to the fire as needed. After about an hour, Maya's eyes fluttered open. She looked around in confusion, trying to figure out where she was and what had happened. When she saw Cole sitting nearby, the memories came flooding back. "You saved my life," Maya said softly, her voice still hoarse from the ordeal. Cole smiled for the first time since the rescue had begun. "Well, you're not completely out of the woods yet, but yeah, I think we can say you're going to be okay." Maya tried to sit up, but Cole gently pressed her back down onto the couch. "Easy there," he said. "Your body's been through a lot. You need to take it slow for a while." Maya looked around the living room with growing awareness. She was in a rustic but comfortable space with wood-paneled walls, worn leather furniture, and family photos scattered on various surfaces. The fire in the stone fireplace was crackling warmly, and she could feel the heat gradually spreading through her body. "Where are my clothes?" Maya asked, suddenly realizing she was wearing an oversized flannel shirt and thick wool socks that definitely weren't hers. Cole's face reddened slightly. "I had to get you out of those wet things. Hypothermia, you know. I kept everything proper, though. Just focused on getting you warm and dry." Maya nodded, understanding the medical necessity even as she felt a flutter of embarrassment. "Thank you. I mean, for everything. I would have died out there." "Probably," Cole agreed matter-of-factly. "That water's cold enough to kill someone in 20 minutes, maybe less. And the current would have carried you downstream into some really nasty rapids." Maya shivered at the thought, and not just from residual cold. "How long was I unconscious?" "About an hour and a half," Cole replied. "Your body temperature was dangerously low when we got here. I was starting to think I might need to call for a medical helicopter." "Medical helicopter?" Maya asked. "How far are we from town?" About 40 miles to the nearest hospital, Cole said. And this weather's been too unpredictable for helicopter flights lately. That's why I was so focused on getting your temperature back up here at the house. Maya realized just how isolated they were, and how much she owed to this stranger who had risked his own life to save hers. I don't even know how to thank you properly. What you did out there, jumping into that water. Cole waved off her gratitude. Any decent person would have done the same thing. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. But Maya could see that wasn't entirely true. Cole had made a conscious choice to put himself in danger to help someone he didn't even know. That spoke to a kind of character that Maya rarely encountered in her line of work. What's your name again? Maya asked. I remember you telling me, but everything from the river is kind of fuzzy. Cole Bennett, he replied. This is my family's ranch. Been in the Bennett family for 3 generations. Maya looked around the room again, noticing details she had missed before. The furniture was well made but old, showing the wear of daily use. The family photos showed generations of people who looked like they belonged on this land, with the same weathered hands and direct gaze that Cole possessed. It's beautiful, Maya said. The ranch, I mean. What I could see of it on the way here. Cole seemed pleased by the compliment. 5,000 acres of some of the best grazing land in the state. Or it was, anyway. Things have been challenging lately. Maya heard something in Cole's voice that suggested there was more to that story, but she didn't feel like it was her place to pry. Instead, she tried to shift to a sitting position again, moving slowly this time. Cole helped her get comfortable, adjusting the blankets around her shoulders. How are you feeling? Any dizziness or nausea? A little dizzy, Maya admitted. And I'm still cold even with the fire and all these blankets. That's normal, Cole said. Your body's been through a serious trauma. It's going to take a while for everything to get back to normal. Are you hungry? I could make some soup or something warm to drink. Maya realized she was hungry, which seemed like a good sign. Soup sounds amazing, actually. Cole stood up and headed toward what Maya assumed was the kitchen. I'm not much of a cook, but I can heat up a can of soup without burning the house down. As Cole busied himself in the kitchen, Maya had a chance to really look around the living room. The house felt lived in and comfortable, but there were signs that suggested Cole lived alone. No feminine touches, no indication that anyone else shared this space on a regular basis. Maya also noticed that while the house was clean and well-maintained, some things were starting to show their age. The couch she was lying on had been repaired in several places, and the rug in front of the fireplace was worn thin in spots. It was the kind of wear that came from people who took care of their things because they couldn't easily replace them. Cole returned with a steaming mug of soup and a plate of crackers. Chicken noodle, he said. Nothing fancy, but it's hot and it'll help get your core temperature back up. Maya accepted the mug gratefully, wrapping her hands around it and letting the warmth seep into her fingers. The soup tasted better than any gourmet meal she had ever eaten, probably because her body was craving the calories and warmth. This is perfect, Maya said after taking several sips. You're being way too modest about your cooking skills. Cole smiled and settled back into the chair across from her. So what brings a photographer all the way out here? This isn't exactly on the tourist trail. Maya explained about her nature photography work and her search for more dramatic, authentic subjects. She told Cole about feeling stuck in her career and wanting to capture images that showed the raw power of the natural world. Well, you certainly found some raw power today, Cole observed. Though I'm guessing this wasn't exactly what you had in mind. Not exactly, Maya agreed with a rueful laugh. I lost all my equipment in the river. Cameras, lenses, everything. That's going to be expensive to replace. Cole looked genuinely sorry to hear that. Insurance? Some of it, Maya said, but not all. And definitely not enough to replace everything I lost. Those were professional-grade cameras and lenses. We're talking about $15,000 worth of equipment. Cole whistled low. That's serious money. I'm sorry about that. Maya shrugged, trying to act like it wasn't as big a deal as it really was. Equipment can be replaced. My life can't. You saved what was really important. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the fire crackle and the wind starting to pick up outside. Maya was feeling stronger and warmer, but she was also becoming aware of just how much her ordeal had taken out of her. I should probably call someone, Maya said eventually. Let people know I'm okay. My editor is expecting me to check in tonight. Cole pointed toward an old-fashioned landline phone on a side table. Cell service is pretty spotty out here, but the landline works fine. Maya made her calls, explaining to her editor and her roommate that she had had an accident but was safe. She kept the details vague, partly because she was still processing what had happened and partly because she wasn't sure anyone would believe the full story. When she finished with the phone calls, Maya found Cole adding wood to the fire. "I should probably head back to town," she said. "I don't want to impose on your hospitality any longer." Cole turned to look at her with an expression of genuine concern. "Ma'am, I don't think that's a good idea. It's getting dark. The roads out here can be tricky at night, and you're still recovering from hypothermia. Why don't you stay here tonight? I've got a spare bedroom, and you can head back to town in the morning when you're feeling stronger." Maya hesitated. She barely knew this man, despite the dramatic circumstances of their meeting. But she also realized that Cole was right about her condition. She was still shaky and weak, and the thought of driving 40 miles on unfamiliar roads in the dark didn't appeal to her. "Are you sure?" Maya asked. "I don't want to be any trouble." "No trouble at all," Cole assured her. "I don't get much company out here, and I'd feel better knowing you're safe rather than worrying about you driving these mountain roads at night." Maya made her decision. "Okay, if you're sure it's not an imposition, I'll stay tonight and head back in the morning." Cole seemed relieved by her decision. "Good. I'll get the spare room ready for you. In the meantime, you should probably try to eat something more substantial than soup. Your body needs fuel to finish recovering." As Cole went to prepare the guest room, Maya reflected on the strange turn her day had taken. This morning she had been a photographer looking for dramatic nature shots. Now she was a woman who had nearly died and been saved by a cowboy who seemed to have stepped out of a different era. Maya realized she was genuinely curious about Cole and his life on this isolated ranch. There was something about him that was different from the men she usually met in her professional circles. He seemed completely comfortable with himself and his place in the world, even though that world was clearly facing some kind of challenges. As the evening wore on, Maya found herself feeling stronger and more alert. The warmth from the fire and the food had done their work, and her body was beginning to feel more like her own again. But she was also becoming aware of how exhausted she was, not just from the physical ordeal, but from the emotional intensity of nearly dying and being rescued. Cole returned and announced that the guest room was ready. "Clean sheets, extra blankets, and a space heater to keep it warm," he said. "Bathroom's just down the hall." Maya stood up carefully, testing her balance and finding it much improved. "Thank you, Cole, for everything. I know I keep saying that, but I don't know how else to express what you did for me today." Cole looked embarrassed by her gratitude. Like I said, anyone would have done the same thing. But Maya was beginning to understand that wasn't true. Not everyone would have jumped into a dangerous river to save a stranger. Maya woke up the next morning feeling surprisingly good. The guest room was simple but comfortable, with handmade quilts and furniture that looked like it had been crafted by someone who understood both form and function. Sunlight was streaming through the window, and she could hear the sounds of ranch life beginning outside. When she made her way to the kitchen, she found Cole already dressed and drinking coffee. He was wearing work clothes, worn jeans, a flannel shirt, and boots that had seen plenty of use. His hair was slightly damp, suggesting he had been up and working for a while already. "Morning," Cole said with a smile. "How are you feeling?" "Much better," Maya replied, and she was surprised to realize it was true. "I was expecting to feel worse today, but I actually feel almost normal." "That's good," Cole said, pouring her a cup of coffee without being asked. "Your body's probably grateful to be warm and dry. Coffee, okay? I'm afraid I don't have anything fancy." Maya accepted the coffee gratefully. It was strong and black, exactly what she needed. "This is perfect." "What time is it?" "About 7:30, Cole replied. "I've been up since 5, checking on the cattle. The weather report says we might get some rain later today, so I wanted to make sure everyone was where they needed to be." Maya looked out the kitchen window and could see rolling pastures dotted with cattle. In the distance, mountains rose against a sky that was clear, but showed signs of clouds building on the horizon. It was a beautiful, peaceful scene that seemed a world away from the drama of yesterday's river rescue. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said. "Yesterday, when you saw me fall in the river, why did you risk your own life to save me? You didn't know me." "I could have been anyone." Cole considered the question seriously while sipping his coffee. "I guess because that's just what you do," he said finally. "When you see someone in trouble, you help if you can. My dad taught me that when I was little, He used to say that how you treat people who can't do anything for you is what shows your real character. Maya found herself impressed by the simple honesty of that answer. In her world of freelance photography and magazine publishing, people's motivations were often complicated and self-serving. Cole's straightforward moral code was refreshing. "Your dad sounds like a wise man," Maya said. "He was," Cole agreed. "Lost him about 5 years ago. Heart attack. He worked this ranch his whole life just like his father before him." Maya heard the sadness in Cole's voice and realized she was getting a glimpse into some of the challenges he had mentioned. "That must have been hard." "It was," Cole said simply. "He was my best friend and my business partner all rolled into one. Still figuring out how to do this without him, to be honest." As they talked, Maya found herself studying Cole's face. In the stress and adrenaline of yesterday's rescue, she hadn't really looked at him as a person. Now she could see that he was probably in his early 40s, with the kind of weathered handsomeness that came from years of outdoor work. His hands were calloused and scarred from ranch work, but his eyes were kind and intelligent. "What about you?" Cole asked. "What got you into photography?" Maya told him about growing up in the city, always feeling drawn to nature and wild places. She explained how photography had started as a hobby in college and gradually become her career. She talked about the satisfaction of capturing moments that most people never got to see, and the frustration of feeling like her work was becoming predictable. "Yesterday, before I fell in the river," Maya said, "I was thinking about how I wanted to capture something raw and real, something that showed the power of nature without making it pretty or safe." Cole laughed. "Well, you definitely got that, though I'm guessing you would have preferred to observe that power from a safer distance." "Definitely," Maya agreed. "But you know what's funny? Even though it was terrifying, it was also the most alive I've felt in years." "Does that make sense?" Cole nodded thoughtfully. "It makes perfect sense. There's something about facing real danger that strips away all the unnecessary stuff and shows you what really matters. I felt the same way in the Army." "You were in the Army?" Maya asked, surprised. 4 years, Cole confirmed. "Did 2 tours overseas before I came back to help run the ranch. The Army taught me a lot about staying calm in dangerous situations." That explained some of Cole's calm competence during the rescue, Maya realized. He had dealt with life-and-death situations before and knew how to think clearly under pressure. "Do you miss it?" Maya asked. "The Army, I mean." Cole considered the question. "Sometimes I miss the clear sense of purpose," he said. "In the Army, you always knew what your mission was and how to measure success. Running a ranch, it's more complicated. You're dealing with weather, markets, regulations, equipment failures, animal diseases. Sometimes it feels like you're fighting 100 different battles at once." Maya could hear the stress in Cole's voice and realized that yesterday's rescue had been a welcome break from whatever problems he was facing with the ranch. "Is business tough right now?" Cole's expression grew serious. "Yeah, it is. Beef prices are down, feed costs are up, and I've got some loans coming due that are going to be difficult to meet. The bank's been patient so far, but their patience has limits." Maya felt a pang of sympathy for Cole. Here was a man who had risked his life to save a complete stranger, and he was facing the possible loss of his family's legacy. "I'm sorry. That must be incredibly stressful." "It keeps me awake at night," Cole admitted. "This ranch has been in my family for 3 generations. The thought of being the one who loses it, that's hard to live with." They sat in silence for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts. Maya was struck by the contrast between Cole's calm heroism yesterday and the everyday struggles he was facing. It seemed unfair that someone with his character and work ethic should be in danger of losing everything. "Can I see more of the ranch?" Maya asked impulsively. "I mean, if you're not too busy with work. I'd love to understand what this place means to you." Cole's face brightened at the suggestion. "I'd be happy to show you around. Fair warning, though. Once I start talking about this place, I tend to go on for a while." They spent the morning touring the ranch, with Cole explaining the different aspects of cattle ranching and land management. Maya was fascinated by the complexity of the operation and the deep knowledge required to do it well. Cole knew every pasture, every water source, every potential problem area on the 5,000 acres. Maya also began to understand the scope of the challenges Cole was facing. The ranch needed significant investment in infrastructure, new fencing, equipment updates, building repairs. The cattle market was unpredictable, and environmental regulations were becoming more complex every year. But despite the challenges, Maya could see that Cole loved this life. His whole face changed when he talked about the land and the cattle. This wasn't just a job for him. It was his identity and his connection to his family's history. "Your father would be proud of what you're doing here," Maya said as they watched a herd of cattle grazing peacefully in a valley below the ranch house. "I hope so," Cole replied. "Sometimes I feel like I'm letting him down by struggling so much with things that seem to come naturally to him." "I think you're being too hard on yourself," Maya said. "The challenges you're facing now are different from what he dealt with. The fact that you're still fighting to keep this place going shows how much you honor his memory." Cole seemed moved by her words. "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know." As they continued the tour, Maya found herself seeing the ranch through Cole's eyes. What had looked like empty pasture to her became a complex ecosystem that Cole managed with scientific precision. Every decision about where to graze cattle, when to move them, how to manage water resources, it all required knowledge that had been built up over generations. Maya also began to see potential in the ranch that Cole might not have recognized. The dramatic landscape, the authentic ranch life, the connection to the land and family history, these were exactly the kinds of subjects that magazines and advertisers were looking for. "Cole," Maya said as they headed back to the ranch house for lunch, "have you ever thought about agritourism? Or maybe working with photographers and filmmakers who want to document authentic ranch life?" Cole looked puzzled. "Not really. Why would anyone want to come out here and watch me work with cattle?" Maya smiled at his lack of awareness of his own appeal. "Trust me, there's a huge market for authentic experiences. People in cities dream about this kind of life. And the landscape here is absolutely stunning. With the right marketing, you could probably generate significant additional income without interfering with your ranching operations." Cole looked interested but skeptical. "I wouldn't know where to start with something like that." "I might be able to help with that," Maya said, the idea forming as she spoke. "I know people in the photography and travel industries. I could probably help you develop some opportunities." Cole stopped walking and looked at Maya seriously. "Why would you want to do that?" "You barely know me." Maya met his gaze directly. "Because you saved my life and because I can see that this place and this way of life are worth preserving. And because—" She paused, realizing she was about to say something that might change everything. "Because I've never met anyone like you." The words hung in the air between them, and Maya immediately felt her cheeks grow warm. She hadn't meant to be so direct about her feelings, but something about Cole's honest, straightforward manner made it hard to be anything but truthful. Cole looked surprised but not uncomfortable. "I've never met anyone like you either," he said quietly. "City people usually think this kind of life is boring or backward." "There's nothing boring about what you do," Maya replied. "You're managing thousands of acres of land, caring for hundreds of animals, dealing with weather and markets and a dozen other variables that could change everything overnight. Most people in the city couldn't handle that kind of responsibility." They resumed walking toward the house, but the atmosphere between them had shifted. Maya was acutely aware of Cole beside her, and she could sense that he was equally aware of her. The dramatic circumstances of their meeting had created an unusual intimacy, but what Maya was feeling now went beyond gratitude for being rescued. "Maya," Cole said as they reached the porch, "I need to be honest with you about something." Maya felt her heart skip, worried that Cole was about to tell her he was married or involved with someone else. "What is it?" "My life out here. It's not easy," Cole said, leaning against the porch railing. "I work 7 days a week, I'm up before dawn most days, and I go to bed exhausted most nights. The ranch is barely staying afloat financially, and there's no guarantee I'll be able to keep it going much longer. It's not the kind of life most women would want." Maya understood what Cole was really saying. He was warning her off, trying to protect both of them from getting involved in something that might not work out. It was probably the smart thing to do, but Maya found herself wishing he hadn't been quite so practical. "I understand," Maya said, "and I appreciate your honesty." They went inside for lunch, but the easy conversation from the morning had become more subdued. Maya could feel the weight of unspoken possibilities between them, complicated by the vast differences in their lives and circumstances. After lunch, Maya called her insurance company to report the loss of her camera equipment. The conversation was frustrating, involving long hold times and detailed questions about exactly how the equipment had been lost. Maya found herself having to explain multiple times that yes, She had really fallen into a river, and no, it hadn't been due to any reckless behavior on her part. While Maya dealt with insurance issues, Cole returned to his ranch work. Maya could see him through the kitchen window, fixing fence posts with the same methodical precision he had shown during the ranch tour. Everything he did seemed purposeful and efficient, with no wasted motion or effort. When Maya finished with the insurance calls, she found herself at loose ends. She was used to being constantly busy with photography projects, editing work, and client communications. The forced inactivity felt strange, even though she knew her body was still recovering from yesterday's ordeal. She decided to explore the ranch house more thoroughly. With Cole's permission, she looked through the family photos scattered throughout the living room. The pictures told the story of 3 generations of Bennetts working this land. Cole's grandfather as a young man with his first cattle. Cole's father on horseback, looking remarkably like Cole himself. Cole in his army uniform, younger and somehow more serious than the man she was getting to know. Maya also found photos of Cole with a woman and a young girl. The woman was pretty in a conventional way, with carefully styled hair and makeup that suggested she was more comfortable in town than on a ranch. The little girl had Cole's eyes and his direct gaze, and Maya realized this must be his daughter. "That's Luna," Cole said from behind her, making Maya jump. She hadn't heard him come in. "She's beautiful," Maya said, meaning it. "She looks like you." "She's the best thing I ever did," Cole said with obvious pride. "Smart as a whip and tougher than she looks. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up." "Does she live here with you?" Maya asked, though the absence of any toys or children's clothes suggested she probably didn't. "No," Cole said, his expression growing sad. "She lives in town with her mother. I get her every other weekend and for a few weeks in the summer. It's not enough, but it's what the divorce settlement allowed." Maya could hear the pain in Cole's voice. Losing daily contact with his daughter was obviously one of the hardest parts of his divorce. "The woman in the photos, that's your ex-wife?" "Rebecca," Cole confirmed. "We met in college, got married young, had Luna. For a while things were good. But ranch life wasn't what Rebecca thought it would be. Too isolated, too unpredictable, too much hard work for not enough money." Maya could understand both perspectives. Ranch life would be a difficult adjustment for someone who hadn't grown up with it. But she also felt that Rebecca had been short-sighted in not appreciating what she had with Cole. "I'm sorry," Maya said. "Divorce is never easy, especially when children are involved." "The hardest part is that Luna loves it out here," Cole said. "She's a natural with the horses and cattle, and she understands the land the way her grandfather did. But Rebecca thinks ranch life isn't suitable for raising a child." Maya could see that this was another source of stress for Cole, on top of the financial pressures he was facing. He was fighting to keep his family's ranch while also dealing with limited access to his daughter. It was a lot for anyone to handle. That evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Maya found herself thinking about her own life back in the city. Her apartment was comfortable but sterile. Her work was satisfying but increasingly routine. Her social life consisted mostly of professional networking events and casual relationships that never seemed to develop into anything meaningful. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said. "Do you ever think about giving up the ranch? Moving to town, finding an easier life?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. "Every day," he admitted. "Especially when I'm lying awake at 3 in the morning worrying about money. But then I get up and walk outside and I see the mountains and the pastures and the cattle, and I remember why this matters. It's not just about money, is it?" Maya said. "No," Cole agreed. "It's about continuing something that my grandfather started. It's about taking care of the land and the animals. It's about proving to Luna that some things are worth fighting for, even when they're difficult." Maya understood. Cole wasn't just running a business. He was preserving a way of life and a connection to the land that was becoming increasingly rare. The financial struggles were real, but giving up would mean losing something that couldn't be measured in dollars. "What about you?" Cole asked. "Are you happy with your life in the city?" Maya considered the question honestly. "I thought I was," she said. "I have a good career, financial independence, the freedom to travel and pursue my interests. But lately I've been feeling like something's missing." "What kind of something?" "Purpose, maybe," Maya said. "Connection to something bigger than myself. I take pictures of beautiful places, but I'm always an observer. Never really part of what I'm documenting." Cole nodded thoughtfully. "That's the difference between visiting a place and belonging to it. Maya realized that Cole had put his finger on exactly what she had been feeling. She had spent her career documenting other people's lives and communities, but she had never found her own place to belong. As the evening wore on, Maya became increasingly aware that her time at the ranch was coming to an end. Tomorrow she would have to return to the city and figure out how to replace her lost equipment and get back to work. The thought of leaving felt surprisingly difficult. "I should probably head back to town tomorrow," Maya said reluctantly. "I need to deal with the insurance claim and start replacing my equipment." "Of course," Cole said, though Maya thought she detected some disappointment in his voice. "I'll drive you. That road can be tricky if you're not familiar with it." Maya wanted to say that she didn't have to leave, that she could stay longer and help with ranch work or continue exploring the possibilities for agritourism, but she recognized that as wishful thinking. She had a life and responsibilities back in the city, just as Cole had his responsibilities here. Still, as they said goodnight and went to their separate rooms, Maya found herself hoping that this wouldn't be the end of their connection. Cole Bennett had shown her a different way of living, and more importantly, he had shown her a different kind of person than she usually encountered. Maya lay awake that night thinking about the choices she had made in her life and the choices that lay ahead. Yesterday she had nearly died in a river. Today she had discovered a man and a way of life that challenged everything she thought she wanted. Tomorrow, she would have to decide what that meant for her future. 6 months later, Maya stood in the same spot where she had nearly lost her life. The river looked completely different now. The spring snowmelt was long gone and the water ran clear and gentle, barely deep enough to reach her knees. It was hard to believe this peaceful stream had been a raging torrent that had nearly killed her. Cole stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Hard to believe it's the same river," he said, echoing her thoughts. "It looks so innocent now," Maya replied. "Like it couldn't hurt anyone." "That's the thing about nature," Cole observed. "It's never really safe, just sometimes more dangerous than others. You have to respect it, but you can't let fear keep you from living." Maya turned to look at the man who had become the center of her world. Cole looked older than when they had first met, with new lines around his eyes and gray showing in his hair. The past 6 months had been challenging for both of them, but they had faced those challenges together. The transformation in Maya's life had begun almost immediately after she returned to the city. She had tried to go back to her normal routine, filing insurance claims and accepting new photography assignments. But everything felt different. The work that had once satisfied her now seemed shallow and meaningless. Maya found herself thinking constantly about Cole and the ranch. She called him regularly, ostensibly to check on his progress with the agritourism ideas she had suggested, but really just to hear his voice and maintain their connection. Cole, for his part, had been cautiously optimistic about Maya's suggestions for generating additional income from the ranch. He had started small, hosting a photography workshop for amateur enthusiasts who wanted to capture authentic ranch life. The workshop had been successful enough that he had scheduled several more. But the real breakthrough had come when Maya proposed something more ambitious. What if she moved to the ranch temporarily and documented a full year of ranch life? She could create a photo essay showing the reality of modern ranching, the connection between the land and the people who worked it, and the challenges facing family farms. The proposal had been compelling enough to attract interest from a major magazine, which had agreed to fund the project and guarantee publication. More importantly, it had given Maya a legitimate reason to spend extended time at the ranch and explore her growing feelings for Cole. The first few months had been an adjustment for both of them. Maya had to learn to live without the conveniences of city life, while Cole had to get used to having someone document his daily routine. There had been moments of friction and misunderstanding as they navigated the differences in their backgrounds and expectations. But there had also been moments of incredible connection. Maya had been there when Cole delivered a difficult calf birth in the middle of a snowstorm. Cole had been there when Maya captured the perfect shot of sunrise over the mountains after waiting in freezing temperatures for 3 hours. Slowly, they had become partners in more than just the photography project. Maya had thrown herself into learning about ranch work, helping with everything from mending fences to vaccinating cattle. Cole had supported Maya's artistic vision, even when it meant disrupting his normal routines to accommodate her need for specific lighting or angles. The magazine project had evolved into something bigger than either of them had expected. Maya's photos were capturing not just the day-to-day reality of ranch life, but the deeper story of people fighting to preserve a way of life that was disappearing. The images were powerful and moving, showing both the beauty and the difficulty of living so closely connected to the land. More importantly for Cole's financial situation, the photography project had attracted additional attention to the ranch. A documentary filmmaker had approached them about creating a film based on Maya's photos. A travel writer had featured the ranch in an article about authentic Western experiences. Reservations for photography workshops and ranch visits were booked months in advance. The additional income wasn't enough to completely solve Cole's financial problems, but it was enough to take some of the immediate pressure off. The bank had agreed to restructure his loans, giving him breathing room to build the agritourism business further. But the most significant change had been in Cole and Maya's relationship. What had started as gratitude and mutual attraction had deepened into something much more substantial. They had learned to work together, support each other through difficulties, and share the daily rhythms of ranch life. Maya had discovered that she loved the purposeful nature of ranch work. Every day brought concrete challenges that required practical solutions. There was satisfaction in seeing direct results from your efforts, whether it was a successful calving season or a pasture that had been properly maintained. Cole had discovered that sharing his world with someone who truly appreciated it made everything more meaningful. Maya's outsider perspective had helped him see his own life with fresh eyes, recognizing the value in things he had taken for granted. The transformation hadn't been without its challenges. Maya had struggled with moments of doubt about whether she was making the right choice. Her friends in the city couldn't understand why she would give up her independent career to live on an isolated ranch. Her editor had worried that she was losing her professional objectivity by becoming so personally involved with her subject. Cole had faced his own doubts, particularly about whether he was being fair to Maya by encouraging her to stay. Ranch life was hard, and he had already lost one marriage to the demands and isolation of this lifestyle. He worried that Maya would eventually grow tired of the early mornings, the physical demands, and the financial uncertainty. But their relationship had survived these challenges and grown stronger because of them. They had learned to communicate honestly about their fears and concerns. They had developed a partnership based on mutual respect and shared goals rather than just romantic attraction. The turning point had come during a particularly difficult week in late winter. A severe storm had knocked out power for 3 days, and several cattle had gotten sick from eating contaminated feed. Maya had worked alongside Cole around the clock, helping to care for the animals and manage the crisis without complaint. When the crisis was over and they finally had a chance to rest, Cole had looked at Maya with new understanding. "You really belong here, don't you?" he had said. "I think I do," Maya had replied, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. That conversation had led to others about the future they might build together. Maya's magazine project was nearing completion, and they had to decide what would happen when it ended. Would Maya return to the city and visit occasionally? Would Cole consider selling the ranch and moving to be closer to her world? The answer had come to them gradually as they worked side by side through the spring calving season. They didn't want to be apart anymore. Maya had found her place, and Cole had found someone who truly understood and shared his love for this life. The marriage proposal had happened right here by the river, where their story had begun. Cole had gotten down on one knee in the exact spot where he had first pulled Maya from the water, offering her a simple ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "I know this life isn't easy," Cole had said, "but I can't imagine living it without you." Maya had said yes without hesitation, knowing that she was choosing not just a man but a way of life that would challenge and fulfill her in ways she had never expected. The wedding had been small and informal, held in the pasture overlooking the valley with just close family and friends in attendance. Luna had been Maya's maid of honor, having quickly accepted Maya as both a stepmother and a fellow lover of ranch life. Even Rebecca had attended, acknowledging that Maya was good for both Cole and Luna. Now, 6 months after the wedding, Maya was reflecting on how completely her life had changed. Her photography had evolved too, moving beyond simple documentation to become a form of advocacy for rural communities and traditional ways of life. She had found her voice as an artist by finding her home as a person. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked. following her gaze across the peaceful valley. Giving up your old life? Maya smiled and turned to face her husband. You mean, do I regret nearly drowning in that river so I could meet you? Well, when you put it that way, Cole grinned back at her. I don't regret any of it, Maya said seriously. Not the fear, not the cold, not even losing all that expensive equipment. Because it brought me here to this life, to you. Cole pulled her closer, and they stood together watching the gentle flow of the river that had brought them together. The water that had once threatened to tear them apart now seemed like a symbol of the natural forces that had shaped their destiny. I have something to tell you, Maya said, her voice soft with emotion. What's that? I'm pregnant. Cole's face went through a series of expressions, surprise, joy, wonder, and finally a huge smile that lit up his entire face. Really? Really, Maya confirmed. Dr. Martinez confirmed it yesterday when I was in town. We're going to have a baby. Cole picked Maya up and spun her around, both of them laughing with pure happiness. When he set her down, his eyes were bright with tears. A baby, he repeated as if he couldn't quite believe it. Luna's going to be over the moon about having a little brother or sister.